because now I'm also very pleased to announce the only lady so far, but only I hope not the only lady among React Native developers. But I'll tell you, I'm really pleased. Like even more, I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm really pleased that we have a lady here who is Italia Nasi. And Italia, it was really nice to meet you. Like before when we were texting, like LinkedIn, and I'm all the time. I'll tell you honestly, like from my perspective, I'm coming from the blockchain community, and I could see like throughout these 2 years that the number of women in blockchain space is actually growing. So I'm really excited as well to see that the number as well of, I hope, women in among React, for example, the React Native developers is growing, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think like just the number of women in tech is growing, so it's really good to see.
So please, I think if the audience could like clap, they would give a big hand to Talia Nassi, who is developer advocate at Split Software, and she will tell you more about controlled mobile rollouts in React Native. We'll be back for Q&A session. Please prepare your questions because I'm sure that there will be lots and lots of different interesting topics to discuss. So Talia, everything is ready and you may start.
Great. Okay, so we're going to talk about controlled mobile rollout with React Native and feature flags. Just to introduce myself, I'm Talia. I'm a dev advocate at Split. Some things that I'm like super passionate about. I'm known for testing in production, and that's kind of like what led me to Split in the first place. I'm all about feature flags in your release process. So that's why I like talking about feature flags, because I think they make a really big difference. But anyway, so today we're going to set up feature flags with React Native. We're going to talk about the process a little bit. So let's get started. So I want to introduce you all to my friend Debbie. This is Debbie, the web developer. And Debbie's a web developer who spent most of her career doing just plain JavaScript development. So she's never done mobile development before. And they moved her to a team, her manager moved her to a team that is the mobile team. And so she just joined this mobile team, and they use React Native on this mobile team. So Debbie gets assigned her first feature, and she goes in and she writes the React Native code. She feels good. She gets it reviewed. She tests it in staging, and she pushes it to production, and the new version gets uploaded to the App Store of this app. Great. She did her first merge, and everything went well. And then later on, there's a problem with the code, and it turns out that what Debbie had merged to master broke the entire app. So in order to fix this, she has to release a fix to the App Store, but she has to wait 2 weeks to do so. And now Debbie is like so worried she's going to lose her job. Like she just joined this team and she's already breaking things. And there's this restriction with the App Store that you can't make changes to your app more than every 2 weeks, right? So how do they fix this? So Debbie's friend John, who's also a developer on the team, suggests that they use code push. And they use that to push out a new version without waiting for the App Store. And what code push is, for those of you who don't know, is basically you can dynamically update the experience to your React Native app, and you don't have to wait those extra 2 weeks when something goes wrong. So, they use code push, and like crisis averted, they can fix this. They can fix the bug that's in production. So then a few weeks later, Debbie's working on another feature that allows users to scan a barcode with their mobile device, and then the barcode will find a specific item for them. So Debbie's working on this feature, and the same thing happens. She releases it to production, and there's a bug. But Debbie is not worried because she thinks, hey, I'm just going to use code push again. So they do some digging, and Debbie and John work together, and they realize that they can't use code push because the bug is in the React Native code that's accessing the camera. So now Debbie really thinks she's going to get fired. Like there's no way to fix this. Like she can't use code push. So Debbie and John are talking about what they're going to do and how they're going to resolve this, because they can't wait 2 weeks to release a fix to the App Store, because this is like a critical, it's a critical bug. So they figure out this hacky solution in JavaScript where they temporarily disabled the new feature while they were waiting for the new version to get released. And then all of a sudden, this mysterious stranger appears and points out to Debbie and John that that thing that you just did, that's called a feature flag. And Debbie is like, what is a feature flag? And a feature flag, Yoda explains, is something that lets you separate code deployment from feature release. And it's kind of like a safety net for your feature releases. So you can turn on and off features without a lengthy release process. So Debbie's product owner or anyone on her team can turn on features or kill a feature just with the click of a button without having to push up any new code and without having a lengthy release process. With feature flags, you can also target your internal teammates in the feature flag, test your code in production, and then release it. So Debbie can add herself and John and the other team members inside of the feature flag, keep the default off for the rest of the world, and then test your code in production without affecting end users. And then there's all of these other safety nets with controlled rollouts. So with controlled rollouts, you can release new features gradually, ensuring a good user experience for a small subset of your users before you release it to your entire user base. So this is really beneficial for Debbie because her team can roll out the barcode feature to 5%, make sure it works for them, and then if there's any bugs, they can roll back. But if it works for the 5%, they can increase it to 10% and then 15%. And this is what's called a controlled rollout. So with feature flags, basically you're getting this extra layer of risk mitigation in case something goes wrong. And then the last thing that they can do is they can also try to A/B test to see whether or not users who have that feature spend more money on the app, or measure the performance between iOS apps and Android apps. Like they could run different experiments using feature flags. So this is kind of like the world of feature flags and like how it relates to Debbie and John's situation in mobile development. And Yoda just advises them, like, next time use a controlled rollout for your feature, so that if this happens again, like it'll only affect 5% of your population as opposed to 100%. And that is exactly what Debbie and John do. So in the future, whenever they released a feature, they used controlled rollouts to mitigate the risk in case something went wrong. So they took Yoda's advice and they started using feature flags to do controlled rollouts. And all they did is go into the feature flag configuration page, and this is what it looks like in Split. And you set your targeting rules. And targeting rules define who sees a feature and who does not. So here, Debbie and John are saying that they want 5% of their users to see this new barcode feature, and then the remaining 95% will see the existing or default behavior. And then as Debbie and John's confidence increases, and as the whole team realizes that, we haven't gotten any errors, our metrics are looking good, then they can slowly move this to have 100% allocation of their user base. So now Debbie and John are as happy as can be because they have this new process for mobile controlled rollout that works really well for them. And again, what it does is it mitigates the risk in case something goes wrong. So if for some reason they happen to ship out a bug to production, and they can't use code push because it's with the bug is with the React Native code, they can use feature flags. But then this grumpy old developer comes in and starts being really negative. I know every team that I've ever worked on has had a grumpy old developer, someone who's been at the company for so long and just likes the way that things have been and doesn't really like change. So we're calling this guy Grumpy Old Dev. So Grumpy Old Dev goes up to Debbie and John and says, hey, your plan only works when you have a strong network connection, right? Because you need to pull the current feature flag status from the server. But like, what happens when you don't have a strong network and you can't load the feature flag configuration. Like, what do you do then? And Debbie and John are like, grumpy old developer, you don't scare us because we use caching. So Debbie and John say that they use Split for their feature flag management. And with Split's updated caching feature, you can cache your feature flag data so that all of your mobile users have access to whatever personalized experience that you intended for them, regardless of their data connection. So this is kind of what it looks like. So you need a way to get your feature flag configuration from the feature flagging system to the phone, right? And what do you do if there's no connection and you can't connect to the feature flagging system? You look at the cache. So by automatically caching your feature flags and polling for updates every 15 minutes, your newest changes will be reflected to your users regardless of their connectivity at the time that they run the app. So the data refreshes every 15 minutes automatically. There's no human intervention or like extra code needed. And again, this is really great for connectivity issues. So mobile caching, so Android and iOS caching, it allows flags that control exposure to your new features, improvements, and bug fixes to be regularly updated and stored in the cache for instances when connectivity might not be available. So by caching your app data locally on each device, you allow your end user to have access to its functionality even when they don't have internet access. So this is great for your users who travel internationally or your users who are just otherwise outside of their data service area frequently. It also speeds up the load time in areas where connectivity is limited because the app can load from the cache while waiting for updates from a slower moving data connection. And then grumpy old dev says, okay, fine, like you got me there, you can use caching for that, but won't Apple reject your app if you keep making changes more frequently than 2 weeks, right? It's against App Store regulations if you push code up more than every 2 weeks to your mobile app. And Debbie and John are like, you know what, if it's good enough for Uber, it's good enough for us. Uber has thousands of feature flags in their iOS code base, so if they can do it, so can we. No, but in all seriousness, a lot of apps use this technique. Uber even published an academic paper on this. It's like a widely known practice, so there isn't anything to worry about there. So Debbie and John have defeated grumpy old dev, and they continue to use mobile-controlled rollouts. So now let's talk about React Native and like how this is done in the code. So how did Debbie do it? Like how do they set up feature flags with React Native? So in your render component, you add the split treatments component that returns the proper treatments based on the name's prop value that's passed down to it. So the name of the feature flag here is enable barcode shopping. And this is what you create from the Split UI. So when you go into the UI, you create your feature flag and you set it up from the UI. And then in your code, you go in and you insert that feature flag here. And notice we have this if-else statement. So we're saying if the feature flag is on for the user, you're able to see the barcode. And if it's off, then you don't get the barcode experience. So if they were doing a controlled rollout in the Split UI, they would target, you know, Debbie and John and the product people. So they would have access because they are targeted in the feature flag. And then for people who don't have access, like the rest of the world who's not targeted, you can see that they do not get they don't get that treatment. So all you do is you wrap the feature with this split treatments component, and then the code inside of that is going to know whether the feature, so show barcode experience, is on or off for the current user. And again, you can use this for so many different use cases. If you wanted to test in production, you could target the people who you need to have access to test first, test with them, fix any bugs, resolve any defects, write your end-to-end tests. And then once you know that it's working, then you turn on the feature flag knowing that it works in production. So You could also run experiments and compare different groups, like target some people in one experience and another group of people in another experience, and see how does this affect your metrics. So there's so many different use cases with feature flags. Controlled rollout is one of them, but it's super powerful. And I guess I spoke very fast because I am done with my slides. But thank you for listening. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to get feedback from you on controlled rollouts or feature flags. You can tweet me or email me. I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A after this, but I'll wait for Maria.
Thank you so much, Talia.